Hey, Stevie on here doing the Junkyard Crawl with friends, or with help from our friends at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts. Thank you. This is 1978 right here, a Ford Fairmont station wagon. Now, you got to remember that in 1970, Detroit was gung-ho on bigger, better, more horsepower. The muscle car era was in full bloom. But for 1973, something happened that shocked the entire globe. The first Arab oil embargo. OPEC, the oil-producing emirate countries, decided to turn off the spigot and let America know that, hey, they had some say in global politics, and if we don't like what you're doing in other parts of the world, we're going to shut off the spigot. So gasoline went sky high from 30 cents a gallon to $1 a gallon. There were shortages, oil tankers were parked off the coast, and Detroit and the rest of the world thought the end was near. We got to start building small cars. So Ford took the bait, which they should have, and decided to do something about it. That was the Fairmont, which basically was Ford's first engineered from scratch car to be as light, tight, and economical as possible. Now, this is kind of a contrast in terms. It's a wagon, but it's also a Fairmont. Now, the Fairmont was the beginning of the Fox platform, and if you like your Fox Mustangs from 79 through, 92, 93, over I go, then you'll certainly like the Fairmont, because the Fairmont came out in 78, Fox Mustang in 79, and the Fairmont rides on a 105-inch wheelbase, the Fox Mustang on 100 inches. They're the same car under the skin, shorter wheelbase on the Mustang, and believe it or not, the Mustang is a taller cowl by about an inch, which allowed the stylist to give it a more dramatic sloping grille and hood line. But again, under the skin, the Fairmont and the Mustang Fox are kind of the same thing. Now this one here, I can't open the hood, but we'll find out this isn't mine, so I'm not going to beat on it. But with that said, this has the basic 2-headlight grille. There was something called the Fairmont Futura, which had an upgrade style, which had 4 headlights up front. So 2 different grilles to identify what level of Fairmont you bought. So again, this has aluminum bumpers, which in 1963 would have been a sign of a Ford lightweight or a Thunderbolt, the first half of production before they went to fiberglass. But by this point in time, Ford was so conscious of cutting weight that aluminum bumpers were standard equipment on every Fairmont. Now this is Car and Driver magazine right here, and this is the September 77 issue, which was previewing the world a new Fairmont for 1978. Fairmont, Ford builds a sedan for the 80s, and it's great. Well, okay, but again, let's look inside, and here we have it. Ford Fairmont, Ford builds a Volvo, and it works. That was high praise. Again, Don Sherman, a very respected writer, and we have it here. Back in the fall of 74, the energy crisis was a year old. Fuel prices are up 40% and climbing. The feds had announced their new fuel economy measurements and were scratching around for a way to get their regulating paws into the gas mileage game. Became CAFE, corporate average fuel economy. So how we have here, the size of the forward box of the body is exceptionally long and tall to house Ford's ancient 250 cubic inch inline 6, even though this engine won't be used in the Fairmont. Instead, the marketing plan has Ford's 200 cubic inch 6 powering 55% of the first year's projected volume of 687,000 cars. The 302 Cleveland V8, which is actually a Windsor, he got it wrong, but that's okay, with a 2-barrel carburetor, is targeted for 30%, although this could slip substantially if Ford encounters difficulty making the required by law 78 CAFE fuel economy average of 18 miles per gallon. The made in Lima, Ohio 2.3 liter 4 is planned for 15% of applications this year. In the reality of things, the projection of 687,000 turned out to be 460,981, a little down, but still a damn good year, 500,000 vehicles. And finally here, their car, this test was, our test car's 302 made this Fairmont the sprightliest Ford we have tested in years. It would chirp its tires convincingly off the line, march smartly to 60 miles per hour in well under 10 seconds, and click off 17-second 80 mile per hour quarter miles all day long. We measured 106 miles per hour flat out, which should give us, the housewives, plenty of zip on their daily rounds. So again, Fairmont was a big deal for Ford, and these were built from 1978 through 1983. The Granada spin-off was part of the family as well. Now this one here has the optional shades on the doors, but to get to the meat of the matter, what engine's under the hood? Well, for that we go to the VIN on the door. We now look at that. In the 5th spot, we'll see an F right there. This is a 302, as wild as it got. That was a $319 option. Other details, we see the DSO 13, the New York zone, transmission W means the C4 automatic. The axle, that means an open 2.47 to 1 ratio highway gear. Rear axle, probably a 7.6 piece. Inside, this one has the automatic, as we saw, and these could be had with a 4-speed, but not with the 302. The 2.34 popper and the 200 cubic inch 6-banger could be had with a 4-speed, which had overdrive. But inside we see that dreaded 85 mile an hour speedometer, which is a mandate as of September, I believe, of 1978. And so a lot of these cars, they could actually go more, as we see this thing went, what, 90 miles an hour, something like that. Don Sherman tested it. But again, as a wagon, this has a nice full interior for the family to get around. And of course, in 1978, when this thing was built, minivans were still about a decade away. So if you wanted a family car to go to the soccer game, get the kids to school, go shopping, you got yourself a wagon. I mean, you could have bought a Ford Bronco or maybe a Chevy Suburban, much larger, much thirstier. And you got to remember, the gas at this point in time went to about $1 a gallon, which was budget breaking for a lot of families. And one thing about these, we can see this one here has aftermarket replacement wheel covers. These are replicas of the Ford Fairmont hubcap, but these are actually simplified. The original wheel covers had some plastic and some metal in them. They must have been lost. These are like fake J.C. Whitneys. They're rusted. They grab the honeycomb look of the original wheel cover. But speaking of rust, here on the door we see the yellow sticker of Z-Bart. This vehicle is rust-proofed by Z-Bart. These little circular holes right here, these are rubber plugs right there, and they say Z-Bart in them. Did it work? You tell me. The idea with this was that the guys would drill holes in your car and then put a wand inside the door or the rockers and then spray hot wax, which would then melt and congeal and protect the inner surfaces from corrosion from the inside out. Well, we all know that most rust happens from the outside in, and Z-Bart had its place, as did Rusty Jones. I remember the TV ads, hello Rusty Jones, goodbye Rusty cars. Well, you know, rust wins in the end. Just ask Neil Young, he knows all about it. So this one here has rusted away, but one beautiful thing about V8 Fairmont wagons is the rear coil springs. They're the stiffest and tallest of the bunch. If you have a 5-liter Mustang and you have big slicks in the back, need some extra clearance for them, get yourself a V8 Fairmont station wagon, grab the coil springs out of the back, and you'll get about another inch of ride height out of the tail of that thing to clear your slicks and keep from cutting them on the fender lips. Again, this one has the optional roof rack, does not have the air deflector, and again, this is a 2-seat wagon. Tailgate comes up, and I do like the fake wood trim. Very American, very, I don't know, very country club. Something restful about it. They say, oh, look at this, a little snake skin right here. That's cute. I wonder what the rest of this thing is. Anyway, in the back, there is the carpeted cargo area, some loose parts, and some rocker trim from some other application, but a nicely finished hard vinyl in the back of this thing, carpeting extending all the way to the back. The rear bumper either fell off or was taken off. One classic with aluminum bumpers was that the hard points inside, the bolts would rust, and then the bumper would come off. In fact, there was a whole slate of GM cars wherein the bumper and the telescoping mounts, the impact absorbing shocks, where the flat plate was bolted to the back of the car, the fasteners would rot, the bumper would hang and eventually fall off in traffic. I remember as a kid in like 1985, 86, yet every once in a while you'd see a rear bumper on the side of the road with the rusted mounts on the side. So again, rust was a major problem in the 80s, 70s, and even now. It's probably the #1 enemy of old cars. But that's the story of the first year Ford Fairmont. Basically a Fox Mustang with a bigger body and a longer wheelbase, same rear suspension, same front suspension. And you know, smart street racers and drag racers know that station wagons like this with like a 351 Cleveland or Windsor under the hood, make that a Boss 351. Why not? 4-speed top loader, make it an overdrive, you know, Doug Nash or something like that. Put a 9-inch in the back and you get yourself a traction monster sleeper. Leave the white paint, leave the wood sides, and you can win some money on Friday night, legally of course. But that's the story of how Fairmont was Ford's first foray into front-engine rear-wheel drive downsizing. Of course, Chevrolet played the game as well with the Malibu in 78. Full-size Impalas went down in 77. So downsizing was the answer to the OPEC problem. And of course, today we continue as much as we can in the auto industry to build lightness in the cars. But now with rollover standards, airbags, side impact stuff, cars have never really been heavier. You know, really, I mean, a car like this today would weigh probably close to 3,800 pounds. This is probably 31. So with that said, modern cars are heavier than they need to be, but we have we have overdrive, we have all kinds of things to save fuel, so they're cleaner and more efficient than you'd expect them to be. But the downsizing thing really wasn't the answer in the long term. But it saved the day for Ford back then, and again, 500,000 of these things sold in '78 alone, so this was the answer for the time. Now, well, Fairmonts make really good drag cars. I happen to have a Ford Fairmont two-door sedan altered wheelbase car with a Camry 4.6, 5-speed Hillborn type injection on it. I love the thing, although I did get rid of the coil springs in the back because they tend to axle hop really bad when you bang gears. I put Chrysler Superstock leaf springs in the back of mine. They work fine. The hard points are in there. You weld it up and you're good. But again, the Fairmont is the unsung Mustang, if you will. And this Wagon is one of a handful built, not a lot with the 302. Well, that's the story of this puppy, and if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel, ring the bell so that you get an update every time a new video happens, and of course that's every single day, so we'll see you tomorrow.